I think Elon Musk realized the only way he's ever going to be safely driven in an autonomous car without some idiot T-boning him at a junction is making all cars around him autonomous. For the same reason, other car makers seem less optimistic about driverless cars. And what about the customers expecting affordable vehicles which, according to EU regulations, must be equipped with advanced driver aid systems, or ADAS, which, in some circumstances, take control over the vehicle? This is going to be a rant, but I also count on your thoughts. So, let's go. I'll start by asking you, what are the most modern driver aids which you interact with on a daily basis in cars which you drive? What are the makes and models, which model year, and when you switch between cars, do you notice any difference in how these systems work? Do they impact your driving style? Let me know in the comment section below. Now, in my line of work, I experience various new features in cars from all manufacturers. When I started my career as an automotive journalist, I was familiar only with ABS. My private car at the time was a Peugeot 306. It was available in two versions, Husky with ABS and Saint-Tropez with AC. I had the latter one. However, as an intern, I got to drive a company Renault Megane which had ABS. And being a young driver with a lot of zeal but not necessarily a lot of skill, I quickly learned ABS lets me step on the brake and maintain maneuverability. Something that cost me both front tires in the 306 and the family in an oncoming car probably a heart attack, for which I sincerely apologize, but I was young and stupid. Anyway, over the years, I got to experience more new features both on public roads and on tracks. ESP, when driving through water puddles, felt extraordinary to a young driver used to being pulled side to side in aquaplaning. Just to remind you, ESP became mandatory on new cars in Europe only in late 2014, so barely a decade ago. Press cars are usually equipped with all the newest tech, so I was able to experience new safety features way earlier than regular drivers. These included things like front collision warning, blind spot monitoring, adaptive cruise control, lane keeping assist. These features usually enhanced regular driving experience. I'm talking about your everyday commute on congested roads, when you're stressed, distracted, tired. When programmed and implemented correctly, these systems can save us a lot of time and worries. However, these were usually reserved for premium brands or as optional equipment in top trim of mass market cars. I recall some features being available in Mercedes and Ford. However, chances that an average Ford customer might experience these driver aids were slim. Nobody wants expensive options, especially if they don't understand the benefit they offer. I suspect Elon Musk took advantage of this lack of interest and understanding when he was presenting the autopilot. Perhaps if you were a young start-upper driving your parents' old Camry, this felt like rocket science, but automotive journalists didn't see what the fuss was all about. I mean, they've all driven cars that had similar stuff. But so far, everything was going more or less in the right direction. The most advanced features were optional, usually very expensive, but also very well calibrated, especially on European cars. When describing these features, I often say well-calibrated system works with me, not against me. Of course, within certain parameters, and I understand it was easier for me because I experienced these features incrementally as they appeared in various new models every couple of months. I'm certain they have impacted my driving style and made me a better and more aware and safer driver. On the other hand, customers switching cars every few years complained some of the new features were too aggressive, in their opinion. Now, in some regions, tailgating is a normal part of everyday driving, and that can upset the front collision warning system. From a driver's perspective, there is still a lot of place in front, but the system is calibrated to avoid what is objectively a dangerous behavior. With age and experience, I became a calmer driver. I get a chance to drive some really powerful and fast cars, but I know better than to overtake in places where your average sales rep in a 1-liter turbo overtakes blind. I understand accelerating is only half of the story. When shit hits the fan, you also have to stop, and these new cars are getting heavier. Perhaps a dangerously high number of drivers believe they have some supernatural powers or luck or 9 lives like a cat because the regulators keep tightening the safety regulations and spoil it for the rest of us. I won't pretend I always drive sticking to the rules of the road, although owning two relatively recognizable cars and quite frequent meetings with fans on the streets make me overly cautious. I hope I'll never end up in the same league as those tabloid celebrities parking in disabled spots and posting pictures of speeding. However, even the middle-aged, experienced me is beginning to feel road safety is becoming too much of a numbers game. Sure, every life we can save thanks to safer cars carries value to the family which you cannot put a price on, as well as calculated monetary value to the economy. Same with accident victims who are taken out of the labor market for a while or for their entire lives. Until recently, most driver aids, which I experienced, made me a better and safer driver. Unfortunately, making advanced safety features mandatory for brands and models which weren't ready for it means two things: higher price and poor implementation. This is one of the reasons why some models are simply pulled from the market. The costs associated with making them compliant with new safety regulations make the cars too expensive, and clients wouldn't buy them anyway. And then there's implementation. I recently test drove a Kia Sportage where the collision mitigating system would apply full brakes in stop-and-go traffic. Only changing the reaction time to late made the car drivable, otherwise sooner or later I'd get rear-ended. I encountered a similar issue in the new VW Tiguan, but during overtaking. Now, I'll admit this was an aggressive maneuver, but not justifying full-on emergency braking in front of the car I just overtook. Or the Suzuki Swift, where the front collision warning system goes off almost every time a car in traffic starts slowing down. And then there is ESA, or the not-so-intelligent speed assist, which emits an audible warning every time you exceed the speed limit. In the past, the only warning would be the flashing speed icon on the screen, which many drivers ignored, so the regulators added other warnings. But carmakers chose the beeper. Why? They could have chosen vibration or haptic feedback on the accelerator. I recall the latter from an Audi a decade ago. Over there, the efficiency assistant pushed back on the gas pedal as I approached the junction. However, these are more complex and more expensive solutions than a cheap beeper, which the customers now have to turn off every time they start the car. Warnings are based on the speed sign recognition system and sat-nav data, both of which are only moderately accurate, so ESA is more of a distraction than help. Also, the new versions of the lane keeping assist seem less than perfect. They either react too late or too early, but most of all, they're too abrupt, which in some situations can upset the car and cause more trouble, especially for an inexperienced driver. Now, I don't want to sound like an old fart, but leave some decision-making to the driver who ultimately is responsible for driving a car, not a computer. I recall a dozen years ago or so, one of the premium brands forecasted fully autonomous cars by 2025. Today we know it's more complicated because even the best programmed computer has to face an unpredictable driver, especially one driving a car with the new generation driver aid systems programmed by someone who's never driven a car because they prefer bicycles and public transport. There are still brands which haven't made their cars drive like complete piles of junk because they remember who their customers are. Drivers, not accounting systems. However, these brands are a minority and usually an expensive one, and that's bad news for the customers who'd like to vote with their wallets. Or maybe the customers don't care and will buy anything as long as it's cheap. Maybe it's just my first world problems. What do you think? Let me know in the comment section below. If you like my sarcastic, down-to-earth, and possibly mildly amusing car reviews, join me every Friday at 3 p.m. Central European Time, and don't forget to subscribe and like this video as it helps me with the YouTube algorithm. Thanks for watching, and I will see you in the next one.